October 26, 2016, Wednesday of the 30th week in Ordinary Time.
A reading from the letter of St. Paul to the Ephesians. Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother. This is the first commandment with a promise, that it may go well with you and that you may have a long life on earth. Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up with the training and instruction of the Lord. Slaves, be obedient to your human masters with fear and trembling, in sincerity of heart, as to Christ, not only when being watched as currying favor, but as slaves of Christ, doing the will of God from the heart, willingly serving the Lord and not men, knowing that each will be requited from the Lord for whatever good he does, whether he is slave or free. Masters, act in the same way towards them, and stop bullying, knowing that both they and you have a master in heaven, and that with him there is no partiality. The word of the Lord.
The responsorial psalm. The response is, "The Lord is faithful in all his words." Let all your works give you thanks, O Lord, and let your faithful ones bless you. Let them discourse of the glory of your kingdom, and speak of your might. The Lord is faithful in all his words. Making known to men your might, and the glorious splendor of your kingdom. Your kingdom is a kingdom for all ages, and your dominion endures through all generations. The Lord is faithful in all his words. The Lord is faithful in all his words, and holy in all his works. The Lord lifts up all who are falling, and raises up all who are bowed down. The Lord is faithful in all his words.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to St. Luke. Jesus passed through towns and villages, teaching as he went and making his way to Jerusalem. Someone asked him, "Lord, will only a few people be saved?" He answered them, "Strive to enter through the narrow gate, for many, I tell you, will attempt to enter but will not be strong enough. After the master of the house has arisen and locked the door, then will you stand outside knocking and saying, 'Lord, open the door for us.' He will say to you in reply, 'I do not know where you are from.' And you will say, 'We ate and drank in your company, and you taught in our streets.' Then he will say to you, 'I do not know where you are from. Depart from me, you evildoers.' And there will be wailing and grinding of teeth when you see Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and all the prophets in the kingdom of God, and you yourselves cast out. And people will come from the east and the west, and from the north and the south, and will recline at table in the kingdom of God. For behold, some are last who will be first, and some are first who will be last." The Gospel of the Lord.
October 26th, Wednesday of the 30th week in Ordinary Time. The first reading comes from Ephesians 6, 1-9. Yesterday we heard the beginning of what is called the household instructions in the letter to the Ephesians, the instruction of how husbands should treat their wives, how wives should treat their husbands. Well, today that household instruction continues, how children should relate to their parents, parents to their children, how slaves should relate to their masters, masters to their slaves. Children should be obedient to their parents, that is the proper order, but at the same time, fathers should be careful not to provoke their children to anger. They should treat the children with respect, not using them as if they're slaves, not berating them, but rather helping them to build up their life, their faith, so that they can become adults in the Lord. Slaves should be obedient to their masters, but masters should treat slaves with gentleness, with kindness, and not beat them, not bully them. Notice, the author doesn't call the institution of slavery into question. It was an accepted institution at the time of Jesus. That is no longer true. In the 1830s, the Vatican, studying the fullness of Revelation, realized that slavery is a sin against humanity. It took us a long time to be able to draw that teaching. It's similar to the death penalty. Until the days of Pope St. John Paul II, the death penalty was accepted as a possible punishment by the state. But he called that into question, except in the most extreme circumstances, as did Paul VI. They realized that the death penalty is not right, that it is something wrong. It's not that we've received a new revelation. The revelation is one, it's eternal. But rather, we now understand that revelation more fully. The Gospel is from Luke 13:22-30. Somebody in the crowd says, "Are only a few people going to be saved?" And again, it's typical of Jesus. He doesn't respond directly. Rather, he says that we have to enter through the narrow gate. That it is not always easy to live as a Christian, to do what we're called to do. But we have to be willing to die to ourselves, to sacrifice. Because there'll be many people who will say, "Lord, Lord, open the door." And it won't be open. Because Jesus will say, "I don't know who you are." These are the people who claim to follow Jesus during their life, but they paid him lip service. They went to Mass on Sunday, but they didn't live their faith in the rest of their lives. They will not enter the kingdom. While many of those who never even knew the Lord by name will enter from north and south, from east and west. Remember, this is the Gospel of Luke, where Jesus reaches out to the Gentiles, where the message is no longer exclusively for the chosen people. Everybody is chosen. In our own days, are there people who are Buddhists, who are Muslims, who are Hindu, who are even atheists, who try to live the truth as they know it? If they do, they are what Karl Rahner, the 20th century German theologian, would call anonymous Christians. Even without knowing it, they served Christ. So when they arrive at the pearly gates, they'll meet Christ and they'll say, "You know, I served you my whole life. I just didn't know your name." And so Jesus challenges us because he reminds us that if we claim that we're Christian, we've got to live it. Because if we don't, then because we receive this special gift of being a Christian, more will be expected of us. And may God bless us.